Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and stared at the massive planet ahead. Sethkara, the capital world of the Valorian Empire, glowed like a purple jewel against the black of space. He had been to many alien worlds in his 10 years as a captain, but this one made him nervous. The Valorians were old. Their empire stretched across 300 star systems. They had been traveling the stars for thousands of years before humans even invented the wheel. When Earth finally made its first faster-than-light ship, the Valorians had laughed. They called humans the lucky children because they thought humans got to space through pure luck rather than skill. Jake didn't care what they thought. He had a job to do. Earth needed new trade routes, and the Valorians controlled key shipping lanes. If he could negotiate access, human colonies would benefit. It was simple business. "Captain, we're being hailed," said Lieutenant Ben Carter from the communications station. "Put them through," Jake replied. A face appeared on the main screen. The Valorian had silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His eyes were a deep violet color, and his features were sharp and elegant. He wore robes covered in complex patterns that probably meant something important. "Captain Morrison, I am Chancellor Drell. King Theron welcomes you to Sethkara. You will land at the Royal Spaceport. Coordinates are being transmitted now." "Thank you, Chancellor. We'll be down shortly." The screen went black. Jake took a deep breath. He had studied Valorian culture for months, memorized their customs, learned their formal greetings. He knew this meeting mattered. 2 hours later, Jake walked through the royal palace. The place was incredible. Crystal pillars rose hundreds of feet into the air. Water flowed upward in defiance of gravity. Lights danced in colors Jake had never seen before. Every surface was polished to perfection. He felt out of place in his simple uniform. The Valorian guards who escorted him wore armor that looked like liquid metal. They moved with perfect precision, like dancers rather than soldiers. The throne room was even more impressive. King Theron sat on a platform that floated in the center of a massive chamber. He was tall, even for a Valorian, and his silver skin seemed to glow with inner light. His eyes watched Jake with an intensity that made the captain feel like an insect under a microscope. "Captain Morrison," the king's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have traveled far." Jake bowed as he had practiced. "Your Majesty, I am honored by your invitation. Earth hopes to build a strong relationship with the Valorian Empire." "Relationships," Theron said slowly. "Yes." Something in the king's tone made Jake uneasy. This didn't sound like a trade negotiation. "I have a proposal," Theron continued. "One that goes beyond simple commerce." Chancellor Drell stepped forward from the shadows. "His Majesty offers a great honor. A union between our peoples." 2. Jake's stomach dropped. He had a bad feeling about where this was going. "I have 4 daughters," Theron said. 3 are married to nobles of great houses. The 4th, Princess Lyra, remains unwed. I offer her to you, Captain Morrison, as a symbol of friendship between our civilizations." The throne room fell silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. This was insane. He came here to negotiate shipping routes, not to get married to an alien princess. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm just a captain. Surely there are better candidates." "There are no candidates," Theron interrupted. His voice was cold. "My daughter is damaged. She cannot bear children. In our culture, this makes her worthless for political marriage among our own people. But perhaps with a human, she can serve some purpose." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The king was talking about his own daughter, like she was a broken tool. "I would need to meet her," Jake said carefully. "And she would need to agree." "Of course," Theron said, though his tone suggested he thought it was a waste of time. "Chancellor, bring Lyra." 10 minutes later, she entered the throne room. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Princess Lyra was beautiful. Her silver skin shimmered like starlight. Her violet eyes held a deep sadness that made his chest ache. She moved with grace, but kept her head down, as if trying to be invisible. "Father," she said softly. "Lyra, this is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. He has agreed to consider marriage. What say you?" Lyra finally looked at Jake. For a moment, their eyes met. He saw pain there, and resignation, but also something else. A tiny spark of hope, quickly hidden. "If Captain Morrison will have me, I accept," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. Jake realized she was giving him an out. If he said no, she wouldn't blame him. She expected rejection. Jake thought about his own life. His wife, Amy, had died 5 years ago in a colony plague. He had thrown himself into work, accepting every mission, staying busy to avoid the emptiness of his quarters. He was lonely, though he rarely admitted it. He looked at Lyra again. She was a stranger, yes. An alien, yes. But she was also a person being cast aside by her own family. He knew what it felt like to be alone. "I would be honored, Your Highness," Jake said. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. Around the throne room, Valorian nobles whispered to each other. Clearly, they hadn't expected him to agree. The wedding ceremony happened 3 days later. It was cold and formal. Valorian priests said words in their ancient language. Jake and Lyra stood apart, not touching, while the nobles watched with barely hidden contempt. He could see what they thought of him. A primitive human, taking their royal garbage. When it was over, Jake offered Lyra his arm. She hesitated, then took it. Her hand was warm, despite her silver skin. "Thank you," she whispered, as they walked out of the throne room. "For what?" Jake asked. "For not making it worse than it had to be." They boarded the Horizon's Edge that evening. As the ship lifted off from Seth Kara, Lyra stood at the observation window and watched her homeworld shrink into the distance. A single tear ran down her silver cheek. Jake stood beside her, not speaking. There would be time for words later. For now, he just let her grieve. Behind them, Seth Kara disappeared among the stars. Ahead lay the long journey to New Portland, and a future neither of them could predict. Lieutenant Carter approached quietly. "Course laid in for Kepler. 4.4.2. B. Captain. 4 weeks at maximum cruise." "Thank you, Ben," Jake said. As Carter left, Lyra finally spoke. "I'm sorry you were forced into this." "I wasn't forced," Jake replied. "I chose." She looked at him with those sad violet eyes. "Why?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "Because everyone deserves kindness. And because your father is wrong about you." Lyra didn't respond, but her hand found his and squeezed gently. The stars streamed past the window as the Horizon's Edge jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying them toward whatever came next. New Portland was nothing like Seth Kara. Where the Valorian capital gleamed with crystal and perfect light, the human colony was built from metal and hard work. The streets were often muddy from rain. The buildings were functional rather than beautiful. People shouted to each other across markets, instead of speaking in quiet, formal tones. Lyra stood at the window of the small house Jake had arranged for them and watched colonists hurry past in the rain. Children splashed in puddles, laughing. A merchant argued loudly with a customer about the price of vegetables. A dog barked somewhere nearby. It was chaos. It was loud. It was so different from everything she knew that she felt lost. "I know it's not what you're used to," Jake said from behind her. Lyra turned. He stood in the doorway with 2 cups of something hot. He had been kind since the wedding, giving her space, never pushing her. He slept in the other bedroom and treated her like a guest rather than a wife. "It's fine," she said, though her voice was uncertain. Jake handed her one of the cups. "Coffee. It's bitter, but most humans love it. Fair warning, though it might be too strong for Valorian taste." Lyra sipped carefully. The taste was sharp and strange, but not unpleasant. "It's interesting. That's the polite way of saying it's terrible," Jake said with a slight smile. For the first time since the wedding, Lyra almost smiled back. The next weeks were difficult. Lyra tried to adapt, but everything was strange. The food was different. The customs confused her. On Seth Kara, there were rules for everything. How to greet someone, how to walk, how to speak. Jake had duties as the Colonial Defense Coordinator. He spent long hours at the command center, managing security for the colony. Lyra stayed at the house, unsure what to do with herself. One morning, there was a knock at the door. Lyra opened it to find a human woman with dark hair and warm brown eyes. "Hi, I'm Claire Bennett. I'm the colony's chief medical officer." The woman smiled. "Jake mentioned you might need some company." Lyra blinked. "I don't need." "Of course you don't," Claire interrupted gently. "But I could use help at the medical center. We're short-handed. And Jake said you have diplomatic training. That means you're educated, right? Can you read medical data?" "Yes. But..." "Great. Come on. I'll show you around." Before Lyra could protest, Claire had linked arms with her and was guiding her down the muddy street. The casual physical contact startled Lyra. Valorians rarely touched each other. The medical center was busy. Colonists came and went with various injuries and illnesses. Claire put Lyra to work organizing files and entering data. It was simple work, but it kept her mind occupied. "You're good at this," Claire said after a few hours. Lyra looked up from the data pad. "It's just filing. It's attention to detail. And you haven't complained once about the smell, the noise, or the drunk miner who tried to flirt with you." Quote, "He was drunk?" Claire laughed. "Very. You handled it well, though. Better than I did my first week here." Over the following days, Lyra returned to the medical center. Claire talked while they worked, sharing stories about the colony, about Earth, about her own life. She never pitied Lyra or treated her like a princess. She just treated her like a person. "Why are you being kind to me?" Lyra asked one day. Claire paused in her work. "Why wouldn't I be? I'm Valorian. Your people and mine barely tolerate each other." "You're not your people," Claire said firmly. "You're you. And you seem nice. That's enough for me." It was such a simple statement, but it made Lyra's chest tighten with emotion. On Seth Kara, she had always been defined by what she was: a princess, a royal bloodline, a failure because she couldn't have children. Here, Claire saw her as just Lyra. She began exploring the colony more. The markets sold strange fruits she had never seen. The music that played in the taverns was loud and energetic. Nothing like the formal compositions of Valorian courts. Children waved at her as she passed, not caring that she looked different. One evening, she came home to find Jake cooking dinner. The kitchen smelled amazing. "What is that?" she asked. "Pasta. It's from a region on Earth called Italy. I'm not great at cooking, but this is hard to mess up." They sat together at the small table. Lyra tried the pasta and found it delicious. Jake talked about his day, a broken security drone, a dispute between miners, normal colony problems. He asked about her work at the medical center. "Claire says you're a natural at medical data analysis," Jake said. "It's just organization. It's more than that. You see patterns. Claire noticed you flagged 3 cases that turned out to be the same illness. You probably saved lives." Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest. Praise felt different when it was earned through work, rather than given because of her birth. They began having dinner together every night. Jake would cook, and they would talk. He told her about Earth, about the wars that had nearly destroyed humanity, about how they had come together to reach the stars. She told him about Valorian history, about their art and philosophy, about the pressure of being royal. "Do you miss it?" Jake asked one night. "Your home?" Lyra thought carefully. "I miss some things. The gardens. The music. My second sister, Kira, she was kind to me." She paused. "But I don't miss feeling like a failure every moment of every day." Jake's hand found hers across the table. "You're not a failure. My father thinks so. All of Seth Kara thinks so. Then they're idiots." Lyra laughed. It surprised her. Months passed. Lyra grew more comfortable in New Portland. She learned to navigate the muddy streets, to enjoy the chaos, to appreciate the way humans laughed loudly and hugged freely. Claire became her friend. Other colonists greeted her by name. And Jake became important to her in ways she hadn't expected. He made her feel safe. He made her laugh. When she had nightmares about her father's cold judgment, Jake would hear her from the other room and make her tea, sitting with her until she felt better. One night, after dinner, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Kepler 442b had 2 moons, and they both hung low in the sky, casting strange double shadows. "Can I ask you something?" Lyra said quietly. "Anything. Why did you really say yes to the marriage?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. "I lost my wife 5 years ago. Amy was her name. She died in a plague outbreak on one of the outer colonies. I was off-world when it happened. Couldn't even say goodbye." Lyra's hand found his. "After that, I just worked." Jake continued. "Took every assignment. Stayed busy. Didn't let myself feel anything. When your father offered the marriage, I saw a chance to maybe not be so alone anymore. And I saw you standing there, trying to be invisible, and I thought maybe you were lonely too." "I was," Lyra whispered. "I am. So am I." They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the moons rise. Something had shifted between them, changed from politeness to something deeper. That night, Lyra didn't go to her separate bedroom. She stood at Jake's door, nervous, her heart pounding. He opened it before she could knock. "Lyra, I don't want to be alone tonight," she said. Jake studied her face. "Are you sure?" She nodded. What happened next was gentle and tentative. 2 lonely people finding comfort in each other, building something real from an arranged marriage. Neither expected love, but both felt the beginning of it. 2 months later, Lyra sat in Claire's office feeling dizzy. "Well," Claire said, staring at the medical readout, "this is impossible." "What is?" Lyra asked. Claire looked up, her eyes wide. "Lyra, you're pregnant." The world seemed to stop. Lyra stared at her friend, unable to process the words. "That's not possible," Lyra whispered. "I'm infertile. The royal physicians confirmed it. And human Valorian reproduction is supposed to be impossible," Claire said. "But apparently, nobody told your body that." She grinned suddenly. "Congratulations. You're going to have a baby." Lyra put her hand on her stomach, feeling nothing different, but knowing everything had changed. Tears ran down her silver cheeks. She wasn't broken after all. Jake was in a meeting with the mining supervisors when his communicator buzzed. Claire's message was short. "Come to medical. Now." "It's about Lyra." He was out the door before the supervisors could finish their sentence about equipment requisitions. His heart pounded as he ran through the streets. Was she sick? Hurt? Valorian biology was still poorly understood by human medicine. What if something was wrong? He burst through the medical center doors. Claire stood there with a strange expression somewhere between shocked and amused. "Is she okay?" Jake demanded. "She's fine. She's in exam room 3. Jake rushed to the room. Lyra sat on the exam table, her silver face showing a mixture of emotions he couldn't quite read. Relief? Fear? Joy? "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing's wrong," Lyra said softly. Then she smiled. Really smiled. For the first time since he'd known her. "I'm pregnant." Jake felt the floor shift under his feet. "I don't know. It shouldn't be possible." Claire appeared in the doorway. "Actually, I have some theories about that. Mind if I share?" They both nodded, too stunned to speak. Claire pulled up data on her tablet. "So, human and Valorian biology are supposed to be completely incompatible. Different genetic structures, different reproductive systems, everything. But here's the thing, human DNA is weird." "Weird how?" Jake asked. Adaptable. Messy. Earth went through multiple extinction events, right? Humans survived by being flexible. Our genes are like universal adapters. They can work with systems that seem incompatible. Claire zoomed in on a genetic chart. Valorian DNA is perfect, ordered, precise, but that precision makes it rigid. Two Valorians with rigid genetic codes can reproduce, but it's like fitting two puzzle pieces together. They have to match exactly. And I didn't match, Lyra said quietly. The royal physicians said my genetic markers were slightly irregular. Not enough to matter for most things, but enough to prevent conception with Valorian males. Exactly, Claire said. But human DNA doesn't need a perfect match. It's flexible enough to bridge the gap. Jake's genes basically said, "Close enough. Let's make this work." Jake sat down heavily in a chair. "So I can do what the entire Valorian noble class couldn't." "Apparently," Claire grinned. "You're about to make xenobiology history." Word spread through New Portland within days. The impossible pregnancy became the talk of the colony. Scientists from Earth requested permission to come study Lyra. The colonial governor, Governor Pete Marsh, assured them that Lyra's privacy would be protected, but the scientific community was buzzing. Dr. Helen Park arrived from Earth 3 weeks later with a full research team. She was a kind woman who treated Lyra with respect, rather than like a lab specimen. "This is incredible," Helen said after examining the latest scans. "The baby is developing perfectly. She's hybrid, taking traits from both species, silver skin like her mother, but human-compatible internal biology. This child is literally a bridge between two species." "She?" Lyra asked. Helen smiled. "Yes. You're having a girl." Lyra's hand went to her growing belly. "A daughter." That night, Jake and Lyra sat together in their home. The house that had felt temporary now felt like theirs. They had painted one room in soft colors, started collecting baby items from the market. "I want to name her Hope," Lyra said. Jake squeezed her hand. The pregnancy progressed normally. Lyra's belly grew. She felt the baby kick, and Jake would put his hand on her stomach, marveling at the tiny life they had created. Claire monitored her closely, but there were no complications. 9 months after that shocking diagnosis, Hope was born. She was beautiful. She had her mother's silver skin, but her father's nose. Her eyes were a mixed violet, with flecks of human brown. When she cried, it was the most normal, human sound Jake had ever heard. Lyra held her daughter and wept. "I thought I would never have this." "I know," Jake said, his own eyes wet. News of Hope's birth traveled fast, faster than they wanted. The story hit the interstellar news networks, first human-Valorian hybrid, born on frontier colony. Scientists debated the implications. Politicians discussed what it meant for future relations. And on Seth Kara, King Theron received the news in his throne room. Chancellor Drell delivered the report personally. "Your Majesty, Princess Lyra has given birth. A daughter." Theron's violet eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. Lyra is infertile." "Apparently not with humans, Your Majesty. The child is healthy, a true hybrid of both species." Theron stood abruptly. His mind raced. A royal Valorian child who could breed with humans. The implications were staggering. For centuries, Valorians had remained genetically isolated, unable to form blood alliances with other species. But if Lyra's child could reproduce, if her children could reproduce, this changed everything. "Send a message to the human colony," Theron commanded. "Princess Lyra and the royal heir are to return to Seth Kara immediately. This is not a request. Your Majesty, Lyra was married under diplomatic agreement. The humans, I don't care about agreements," Theron snapped. "That child has royal blood. She belongs here, being raised as a Valorian princess, not on some muddy frontier world. Make it clear to the humans that we expect compliance." The message reached New Portland 2 days later. Governor Marsh brought it to Jake, personally. They want Lyra and Hope returned? Jake said, reading the formal demand. Within 30 days, Marsh confirmed. And the tone is not friendly. It's barely shy of a threat. Not friendly. Confirmed a do. Not friendly. Confirmed. Jake felt cold fury building in his chest. Lyra was worthless to them when they thought she was broken. Now that she's valuable, they want her back? That's about the size of it. What are our options? Marsh sighed. Legally, Lyra chose to leave. She's your wife under Earth law and Valorian custom. The child was born on a human colony, making her a citizen by birth. We have every right to refuse. But the Valorians have 300 star systems and a military that makes ours look like a toy. If they push this, it could get ugly. Jake went home and found Lyra feeding Hope. The baby made small, happy sounds as she ate. We got a message from your father, Jake said. Lyra looked up. She saw his expression, and her face went pale. What does he want? Jake told her everything. Lyra held Hope closer. I won't go back. I won't let them raise her in that place, where she'll be judged and measured and found lacking if she doesn't fit their perfect mold. I know. We'll fight this. Jake, my father controls a fleet that could destroy this entire colony. Then we'll make sure he knows what that would cost him. Lyra looked at her husband with new eyes. She had fallen in love with his kindness, but now she saw his strength too. Jake sent a response to Seth Kara that night. It was brief and clear. King Theron. Princess Lyra is a free citizen of the United Earth Colonies by her own choice. Your granddaughter Hope was born under our protection. They will not be returned against their will. We respectfully decline your demand. Captain Jake Morrison. 3 days later, sensors detected Valorian warships entering the system. Not 1 or 2, but 12 massive vessels. Admiral Cale Vorthas broadcast a message to New Portland. You have 48 hours to surrender Princess Lyra and the royal heir. Failure to comply will be considered an act of aggression against the Valorian Empire. Choose wisely. In their home, Lyra held Hope close, singing her a Valorian lullaby. Jake stood at the window, watching the sky, knowing those ships were up there. What do we do? Lyra whispered. Jake turned to look at his wife and daughter. His family. Worth fighting for. Worth everything. We show them what humans do when someone threatens our family, he said quietly. We fight. Outside, New Portland's emergency sirens began to wail as the colony went to full military alert. The 48-hour countdown had begun. The 12 Valorian warships hung in orbit like predators circling prey. Each vessel was 3 times the size of New Portland's largest defense frigate. Their weapons could level cities. Their shields could withstand direct nuclear strikes. Admiral Cale Vorthas stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and studied the small human colony below. He expected this to be simple. Humans were a young species, barely 2 centuries in space. They would see the overwhelming military force and surrender. They always did. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the colony, his communications officer reported. Put it through. A human appeared on the screen. He wore a simple military uniform and looked tired but determined. Admiral Vorthas. I'm Captain Jake Morrison, Colonial Defense Coordinator. We received your ultimatum. Good. Then you understand the situation. Surrender the princess and the royal heir, and no harm will come to your colony. I understand you think you can threaten my family and expect me to hand them over, Jake said calmly. That's not going to happen. Vorthas felt a flicker of irritation. Captain, look at your situation. 3 small frigates against 12 capital ships. Your colony has no planetary shields, minimal defenses. This is not a battle you can win. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But you'll pay for it. Every life you take will cost you. and the whole galaxy will watch you murder civilians for the crime of protecting a mother and child. I have my orders from King Theron, and I have a family to protect. 48 hours, Admiral. Use them wisely. The transmission ended. Vorthos stared at the blank screen, surprised. The human hadn't begged or tried to negotiate. He had simply stated his position and ended the conversation. Sir, what are your orders? His first officer asked. We wait. When the deadline passes, they'll see reason. On New Portland, Jake stood in the command center with Governor Marsh and the colony's military staff. The room buzzed with activity as officers coordinated defensive preparations. 3 frigates, Lieutenant Carter said grimly, studying the tactical display. The Defiant, the Relentless, and the Pathfinder. Against 12 Valorian capital ships. Jake, we can't win this fight. I know, Jake said. But we don't have to win. We just have to make them pay enough that Theron thinks twice. What's the plan? Marsh asked. Jake pointed at the display. The Valorians think we're helpless. They're wrong. We've got 60 orbital defense satellites we installed last year. The Valorians scanned them and logged them as sensor platforms. Carter's eyes widened. But they're not just sensors. No, each one has a mass driver. Small, but powerful enough to launch tungsten rods at relativistic speeds. They can punch through Valorian shields if we hit the right spots. That's still not enough, one of the other officers said. No, but I've also sent an emergency message to Starbase Phoenix. Admiral Linda Hayes is 3 days out with the 7th Fleet. If we can hold for 3 days, help arrives. 3 days is a long time. Marsh said quietly. I know. Which is why we need to buy time another way. Jake pulled up a video file. Lyra made this today. I'm broadcasting it across every news network, human and alien. He pressed play. Lyra appeared on screen, holding baby Hope. She looked directly at the camera, her violet eyes fierce, with determination. My name is Lyra, daughter of King Theron of the Valorian Empire. Many of you know me as the princess who was cast aside, declared infertile and worthless. My father married me to a human to be rid of me, but with Jake Morrison, I found something I never had on Seth Kara. I found love, respect, and a real family. She held Hope up slightly. This is my daughter, Hope. She is proof that I was never broken. The Valorian physicians were wrong. My father was wrong. And now that I've proven my value, now that my daughter represents something useful to him, King Theron wants to reclaim us. Lyra's voice grew stronger. I invoke the right of separation, an ancient Valorian law that allows any royal who has been wronged by the crown to renounce their titles and claim independence. I was exiled and discarded. Now I choose to be free. I am not Valorian anymore. I am a citizen of Earth, a wife, and a mother, and I will not let my daughter be taken to live in a palace where she will be valued only for what she can provide to others. The video ended with Lyra looking directly at the camera, defiant and unafraid. That's going to cause problems, Marsh said. Good, Jake replied. Let Theron deal with public opinion while we deal with his fleet. The broadcast went viral within hours. On Seth Kara, young Valorians who had long chafed under the rigid social hierarchy began protesting. They gathered in the streets, calling for the king to honor the right of separation. They called Lyra brave. In the throne room, King Theron watched the video with growing rage. She dares invoke separation? He snarled. She dares denounce me publicly? Chancellor Drell stood nervously nearby. Your Majesty, the people are responding to her message. The protests. I don't care about protests. That child has royal blood. She represents the future of our genetic lines with other species. I will not lose her to human sentiment. The right of separation is ancient law. Then I will make new law. Theron's voice echoed through the chamber. Send word to Admiral Vorthos. When the deadline expires, he is to take the colony by force. Use whatever means necessary. I want my daughter and granddaughter returned within the week. Back on New Portland, Jake helped evacuate civilians to the underground shelters. The colony had been preparing for this moment since the Valorian fleet arrived. Children, elderly, and non-essential personnel moved into reinforced bunkers designed to survive orbital bombardment. Lyra refused to hide in the deepest shelter. I'm staying with you, she told Jake. Hope needs you. Hope needs both of us. And I won't hide while others fight for our freedom. Claire agreed to stay with Hope in a secure bunker, while Jake and Lyra worked from the command center. It hurt to leave their daughter, but they had to trust others to protect her. The 48 hours ticked down. On the frigates, Defiant, Relentless, and Pathfinder, human crews prepared for battle. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were fighting for their home. That meant something. Lieutenant Carter transmitted final orders to the orbital satellite network. The tungsten rods were loaded and aimed. It would be one shot per satellite. After that, the Valorians would destroy them. They had to make every shot count. On the surface, militia volunteers manned surface-to-orbit weapons. Farmers, miners, and shopkeepers who had fought in Earth's colonial wars now took up arms again. They weren't soldiers, but they were determined. In orbit, Admiral Vorthos watched the countdown reach 0. He had hoped the humans would see reason. He took no pleasure in what came next. All ships. This is Vorthos. Weapons free. Target military installations first. Minimize civilian casualties if possible, but take that colony. The Valorian fleet opened fire. Green energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking military targets. The command center's shields flared as impacts hammered them. Explosions bloomed across New Portland as defense installations were hit. Return fire, Jake ordered. The 3 human frigates surged forward, unleashing everything they had. Missiles, railgun rounds, and particle beams struck Valorian shields. The orbital satellites activated, launching tungsten rods at incredible speeds. The rods punched through shields on 2 Valorian ships, tearing through their hulls. One ship lost main power and began drifting. Another took critical damage to its weapon systems. Direct hits, Carter shouted. 2 capital ships damaged, but the Valorians responded with fury. Beams of energy converged on the Pathfinder. The frigate's shields failed, and its hull buckled. Jake watched in horror as the ship broke apart. 300 crew lost in an instant. Pathfinder is gone, someone reported quietly. The Relentless and Defiant kept fighting, but they were taking heavy damage. Valorian fighters swarmed around them like angry insects. On the surface, militia fired surface-to-orbit weapons. The shots were mostly ineffective against Valorian shields, but they forced the enemy to adjust their positions, buying precious seconds. In the command center, Lyra worked communications, coordinating civilian evacuations and damage reports. Her hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. Jake gripped the edge of the tactical display. They were losing. Slowly but surely, the Valorians were overwhelming them. Then Carter shouted, "New contacts. Quantum signatures inbound." On the tactical display, 16 new ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Human ships. The 7th Fleet had arrived 3 hours early, pushing their engines beyond safe limits to reach New Portland. Admiral Linda Hayes's voice filled the command center. "New Portland. This is the 7th Fleet. You called for help. We're here." The human reinforcements slammed into the Valorian fleet from behind, catching them in a crossfire. The tide of battle shifted instantly. Jake allowed himself a small smile. They had a chance now. A real chance. The Battle of New Portland had only just begun. Admiral Vorthos stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 16 human warships had appeared from nowhere, boxing his fleet between themselves and the planet. His advantage had just evaporated. How did they get here so fast? His first officer demanded. It doesn't matter, Vorthos said. All ships, reform defensive positions, focus fire on the new arrivals. But Admiral Linda Hayes had no intention of giving him time to reorganize. Her fleet dove into the Valorian formation, like wolves among sheep. All ships, weapons free, Hayes transmitted. Target their engines. Disable. Don't destroy if possible. But protect New Portland at all costs. The human warships opened fire. Unlike the frigates, these were proper military vessels, cruisers, and destroyers built for ship-to-ship combat. Their weapons tore into Valorian shields. The defiant and relentless, still fighting despite heavy damage, pressed their attack from the other side. The Valorians were caught in a deadly crossfire. On New Portland, Jake watched the battle with fierce hope. The command center shook as nearby explosions continued, but the intensity was decreasing. The Valorians had shifted their attention to the new threat. Captain Morrison. Admiral Hayes's voice came through. Nice timing on that distress call. Sorry we're a bit late. You're right on time, Admiral, Jake replied. Lyra gripped his hand, her violet eyes fixed on the display showing Hope's bunker status. Their daughter was safe. For now. In orbit, the battle raged. A Valorian cruiser took a direct hit to its main reactor and exploded in a brilliant flash. Two more Valorian ships collided while trying to evade incoming fire, their shields failing as they scraped against each other. Admiral Vorthos realized with growing horror that he was losing. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked him. They used tactics no civilized species would consider ramming attacks, nuclear mines disguised as debris, ships deliberately sacrificing themselves to take out larger targets. One human destroyer, the Fury, had its engines destroyed but used its remaining maneuvering thrusters to crash directly into a Valorian capital ship. Both vessels were destroyed, but the Valorians lost a ship worth 10 times the destroyer's value. Admiral, we've lost 6 ships, his first officer reported. 3 more are heavily damaged. The humans. I can see what the humans are doing, Vorthos snapped. He looked at the tactical display. His fleet was being torn apart. If he continued fighting, he would lose everything. King Theron had ordered him to take the colony, but Theron wasn't here watching his people die. All ships, cease fire and withdraw to safe distance, Vorthos ordered. Transmit our surrender. The remaining 6 Valorian ships pulled back, their weapons going silent. The battle had lasted 6 hours. The debris field in orbit would take months to clear. On New Portland, cheers erupted in the command center. Jake closed his eyes in relief, then immediately opened them. Damage report. Casualties. The numbers came in slowly. 2 frigates lost the Pathfinder. Completely destroyed. The Relentless so badly damaged it would never fly again. 3 human destroyers destroyed. 800 crew members dead. On the ground, 32 civilians killed in the bombardment, despite the shelters. Every number was a person. Every person had a family. But New Portland still stood. Hope was safe. Jake left the command center and ran to the bunkers. Lyra was ahead of him, sprinting despite her exhaustion. They found Claire holding Hope, the baby miraculously asleep through all the chaos. She's fine, Claire said, handing Hope to Lyra. Didn't even wake up during the worst of it. Lyra held her daughter close, tears streaming down her silver face. Jake wrapped his arms around both of them. His family, safe and whole. It's over, he whispered. It's over. But it wasn't quite over. On Seth Kara, King Theron received the news of the battle in his throne room. His face remained expressionless, but Chancellor Drell could see the fury in his eyes. 8 ships lost or destroyed, Drell reported quietly. Admiral Vorthos surrendered to avoid total annihilation. The humans defeated the 3rd Fleet, Theron said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. Yes, Your Majesty. And the video Princess Lyra broadcast has reached every world in the Empire. The protests have grown. The people are calling for you to honor the right of separation. Theron was silent for a long moment. He had miscalculated. He had assumed the humans would back down when faced with military might. He had assumed his own people would support his actions. He was wrong on both counts. "The Council of Nobles requests an audience," Drell added. "They wish to discuss the succession laws and the issue of Princess Lyra." Theron understood what that meant. The nobles were questioning his judgment. If he pushed this further, if he sent more fleets and lost more ships, they might move against him. For the first time in his long reign, King Theron felt his power slipping. 3 weeks later, a formal declaration arrived from Seth Kara. King Theron officially recognized Princess Lyra's right of separation. She was no longer a Valorian royal. Her daughter Hope had no claim to the Valorian throne. The matter was closed. But the declaration came with an edge, a reminder that the Valorian Empire had long memory, and that this matter, while legally settled, was not forgotten. Jake read the declaration and felt nothing but relief. Theron could posture all he wanted. Lyra and Hope were safe. That was all that mattered. 6 months passed. New Portland rebuilt. The debris in orbit was cleared. Memorials were erected for the fallen. Life slowly returned to normal. Or as normal as it could be after such events. Lyra stood in the rebuilt Central Plaza, holding Hope's hands as the 1-year-old took wobbly steps. Around them, humans and Valorians worked side by side. After the battle, several young Valorians who disagreed with King Theron's actions had requested asylum on New Portland. They brought knowledge, skills, and a desire to build something new. Claire approached with a datapad. "The latest medical analysis just came back. Hope's genetics are stable. She'll be able to have children of her own someday." "Really?" Lyra asked. "Really. Your daughter isn't just a hybrid. She's a bridge. Her children could connect humans and Valorians in ways we never imagined." Quote, Lyra looked down at Hope, who was laughing as she stumbled and caught herself. This child, born from an arranged marriage that should never have worked, represented something impossible becoming real. Jake joined them, fresh from a meeting with Governor Marsh. The Earth Council just approved New Portland as an official diplomatic center for human-Valorian relations. "We're going to host the first joint cultural exchange next month." "That's wonderful," Lyra said. "There's more." Jake smiled. "They want to offer you a position. Official ambassador. Your job would be to help humans and Valorians understand each other." Lyra considered this. 6 months ago, she had been a discarded princess with no purpose. Now, she had a family, a home, and the chance to build bridges between worlds. "I accept," she said. That evening, they stood on their porch, watching the twin moons rise. Hope was asleep inside, exhausted from her day of toddling around. The colony was quiet and peaceful. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyra asked. "Agreeing to marry me?" Jake pulled her close. "Even with the war and the death and everything that happened? Especially because of all that. It proved what we're fighting for matters. Family matters. Love matters. And anyone who tries to take that away will learn what humans do when we're pushed." Lyra leaned against him, content. In the distance, they could hear music from one of the taverns, human and Valorian instruments playing together, creating something new and beautiful. Across the galaxy, on Seth Kara, King Theron sat on his throne and watched reports of New Portland's cultural exchange programs. Young Valorians were leaving his empire to join this new experiment. His power was waning, and he knew it. He had tried to reclaim his daughter and failed. He had underestimated humanity and paid the price. But the thing that bothered him most was simpler in trying to control his daughter's value. He had lost the chance to know his granddaughter. A new transmission arrived from New Portland. It was a simple video. Hope's first birthday party. Humans and Valorians celebrated together. The child laughed as she tried to blow out a single candle on a cake. Theron watched it alone in his throne room. His daughter looked happy. His granddaughter was loved. He had won battles and conquered systems. But Jake Morrison, a simple human captain, had won something more valuable: a family. On New Portland, Jake helped clean up after the party. Hope was asleep on Lyra's shoulder, exhausted from her big day. Friends and neighbors had come to celebrate, bringing gifts and good wishes. "You know," Lyra said, "the colonists have started calling Hope something. Did you hear?" A teen unread her. "What's that?" "Mother of the New Way. They say she's the first of a new generation. Children who will grow up seeing no difference between species. Only people." Jake smiled. They put Hope in her crib, watching her sleep peacefully. This child, born from an impossible love, represented hope for a better future. A future where arranged marriages could become real love, where different species could build families, where the word impossible just meant not yet achieved. Outside, the stars shone bright over New Portland. Somewhere among them was Seth Kara, with a king who had lost more than a battle, and somewhere closer were countless worlds watching, wondering if they too could build bridges instead of walls. The story of Princess Lyra and Captain Jake Morrison was far from over. It was only beginning. Their daughter would grow up in a galaxy, slowly learning that strength came not from military might or ancient bloodlines, but from the courage to choose love over tradition, family over politics, and hope over fear. And that was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the stubborn insistence that impossible things were just challenges waiting to be overcome by ordinary people, doing extraordinary things for the ones they loved.